Be Frankie.
Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out, we're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out, we're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out, we're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out, we're stuck in the matrix.
Yo, what's good? It's your boy B-Dell. If you're new to this channel, hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Today, I'm going to give a definitive breakdown on the Project 2025 manifesto and how it's a far-right bureaucratic ultranationalist system that is being used to eradicate the globalist agenda of the deep state shadow government who controls the liberalistic democratic infrastructure of the Western world. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we finna get straight to it. That way we're able to delineate good from evil, to where you won't get caught up into the tricknology and the semantics. So I'm going to give a logical assertion about everything that's going on within the infrastructure of Project 2025, right? Because we in that time right now, we in the time of revealing. Things are starting to speed up, so it's only right for me to give you a definitive synopsis about everything that's going on. So one thing you got to understand about Project 2025, Project 2025 is basically a presidential transition project that is based upon a conservative aspect that is basically the precursor to fascism. Fascism is a militarized police state that's based on aristocracy, which is based on the foundation of ultranationalist Christians under a one world religion, which is a totalitarian order under a new world order, right? So it's basically no different from the globalist agenda of Agenda 21, that is basically being propagated by the democratic liberalistic system that's being controlled by the deep state shadow government. Because the far left, one thing I got to tell you about the far left, everything as far as, democracy and liberalism, and it's basically the foundation of socialism and Marxism. Socialism and Marxism is basically the precursor to a communistic society, which is also the foundation of a totalitarian cybernetic dictatorship that's based on transhumanism, right? So that's why I said the Agenda 21 aspect is basically the agenda for the 21st century. It's the agenda for the 21st century because, like I said, it's being controlled by the globalists. The globalists are basically the deep state shadow government that controls democracy, liberalism, and things of that nature. So one thing you got to understand about the far left, there's a process at hand to where it gives you the illusion of free will. It gives you the illusion of progressiveness. That's what the far left does, basically. It basically keeps you in a state of fallacy and illusions and tricknology as they endorse this globalistic agenda that's propagated by the Democrats, right? Now, the far right, they do the same thing, but it's more on a totalitarian level. It's more at a conservative level. But the end goal for both the Democrats and the Republicans is the New World Order, as you see in the middle when you look at my cursor here. The end goal is a totalitarian state that's based on authoritarianism, which is based on mass surveillance and economic intervention, where you have a universal based income system. So where you control people within the infrastructure of the city that's based on cybernetics, right? So Project 2025 is no different from Agenda 21. Agenda 21 basically just gives you more incentives to the matrix. Project 2025 basically eradicates the incentives of the Western world. So that's why a lot of people, a lot of the implications of Project 2025, a lot of people who are submerged into the democratic and the liberalistic agenda, one thing you got to understand about the Western world, they done gave us so much degeneracy, so much, backwards ways of living, so much to the point where Project 2025 basically dismantles everything within the infrastructure of the Western world, right? And I'm going to break it down to you. Now, and as I was telling you before, Project 2025 is also known as the Presidential Transition Project. It's also a collective right-wing policy proposals from the Heritage Foundation and the U.S. federal government. And like I said, it's basically being propagated by the Republican Party. So it's a bureaucratic system that's based upon far-right ideologies, which is the precursor to fascism. Fascism leads to a totalitarian order. So now, one thing you can understand, as I was telling you before, when you look at the contemporary background of the trilateral connection of the deep state shadow government, is the foundation of the democratic agenda and authoritarian system that is basically the precursor to a totalitarian order as well, just like the far right when you're talking about fascism. But like I said, everything that's acclimated to the far left, it's like a form of degeneracy that gives you the illusion of entertainment, that gives you the illusion of progressiveness, that gives you the illusion and technology that everything is basically in alignment with evolution. But as I was telling you before, there's no evolution for the third dimension because the evolutionary aspect of the system is connected to patriarchy. Patriarchy is basically the foundation of democracy. We finna get into that as I break down certain etymology of words and how it correlates to the Project 2025 agenda. So as I was telling you before, it's all based on mass surveillance and state terrorism, right? Now, for those who don't understand what fascism is basically the foundation of an ultra-nationalist system that's basically like a police state. It's a militarized order that has Christianized backgrounds, right? So that's where your New World Order, one world religion is going to come from. So a lot of people are having, many different afflictions and implications talking about the Project 2025 because it would basically eliminate and destabilize the Department of Education and abolish Title I. It would threaten special education funding, expand vouchers, scale back civil rights protections, and push more religion into the public schools because, like I said, that is basically the foundation of a one world religion. We finna get into that because it talks about how they have different rules and regulations for the Sabbath. We finna get into that because I'm gonna break it down how it correlates to Gnosticism. So one thing you gotta understand, it says right here, it scales back civil rights because civil rights was propagated by the Democrats, right? Because it connects you right back to the 14th Amendment, which is a fraudulent contract, as I was telling you before, because it was never ratified. Anything within the infrastructure of the socio-political aspect of civics, if it was basically never ratified, it is basically a form of a de facto corporation, right? It's basically a demonstrative government. It's a demonstrative government because civil rights, there's no such thing as civil rights, right? So in order to reap the benefits of political sovereignty, in order to reap the benefits of any type of sovereignty on the planet, you have to propagate the Declaration of Human Rights because it connects you right back to the Indigenous People Act. Civil rights connects you to the 14th Amendment, right? Meaning that you're basically civilly dead in the eyes of law under the civil mortuus principles of the Black's Law Dictionary. So we fit to get into this. So like I said, this is it's a form of Christian nationalism. right? Because I was telling you before, the foundation of the New World Order system, you have to propagate a new world, a one world religion, basically. Now, this is where they get you. They mix the medicine with the candy. Because one thing you gotta understand is that, Project 2025 wants to restore the family as the centerpiece of American life and protection of our children, dismantle the administrative state, and return self-governance to the American people, defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats, and security and secure our God-given individual rights to live freely with its constitutional cause, the blessings of liberty. So, like I said, they give you the illusion by including certain things that's basically our birthright. You know what I'm saying? The centerpiece of the family, you know what I'm saying? Like restoring order within the household. That is basically the precursor on how you build communities. And when you have a community, that's when you have the foundation of self-preservation within unity, right? So one thing you understand, like I said, they trying to restore the matriarch, but it's a form of false matriarchy through Project 2025. Because like I said, we didn't follow no damn religions, right? So anything that's propagated by Project 2025 is a form of one world religion, one world order. We didn't follow no religions. You know what I'm saying? We practice true Kemetic spirituality. So that's how you know that they giving us a lot of fallacies and bullshit and semantics within Project 2025, right? So it's not necessarily a good thing. All they doing is mixing the medicine with the candy because they're no different from the Democrats. They're no different from the liberalistic agenda. Now, the reason a lot of people who conform to the liberalistic and democratic ideologies of the Democratic Party is that everything that came from democracy is basically the foundation of degeneracy because it's all acclimated to Black Lives Matter. It's all acclimated to the Antifa movements. It's all acclimated to a form of rebellion. It's all acclimated to the rainbow community. It's all acclimated to when you're talking about abortion and things of that nature, we finna get into it. Because one thing Project 2025 wants to basically dismantle, they want to get rid of civil servants. They want to get rid of invoking the Insurrection Act of 1807, and they want to amalgamate with loyalists. They basically want to surveillance abortion, but that's another form of technology and propaganda in the media because Donald Trump says right here verbatim that no Republican has never introduced a bill to ban contraceptives to humanity. I have never and never will advocate imposing restrictions on birth control. So that is all based upon the misinformation by the deep state shadow government who controls the whole infrastructure of media and social media. They are the ones who control those outlets. Because one thing you understand about who controls those outlets, we all know that they're basically Jesuits. Jesuits are basically Khazars. Khazars are Khazarians. Khazarian, when you break down the etymology of the word, it means wanderer. A wanderer comes from the place of the land of Nod. The land of Nod is also acclimated to Saturn. We finna get into it. So one thing you understand about Project 2025, it basically eradicates everything on this list. So that's why a lot of liberals, a lot of people who are part of the Democratic Party, a lot of Black people who are brainwashed, they are very disgruntled about Project 2025 because when you understand the inception of true Kemetic spirituality, everything was the foundation of a republic. A republic is a form of a matriarch. We didn't have no democracies. Democracy was a part of the fraud, right? Everything that's based upon fraud is acclimated to democracy. Academic fraud, right? Federal fraud, economical fraud, which is also connected to a form of eugenics when you're talking about Margaret Sanger. She created the Planned Parenthood, which was originally named the Negro Project, right? It was originally named the Negro Project. And the foundation of Planned Parenthood is that she wanted a lot of Americans wiped out because she had a special disdain for Black Americans. So she instigated the Negro Project in 1939. The goal was to reduce Black population, right? Black population, which is a form of for, forced sterilization and segregation for the unfit when you're talking about your so-called Black people in America, right? So one thing you got to understand is that, the great majority of these things within the infrastructure of the Democratic Party basically defended slavery. The Democratic Party started the Civil War. The Democratic Party opposed Reconstruction. The Democratic Party basically propagated and created the KKK. The Democratic Party imposed segregation. The Democratic Party also perpetuated lynchings. So Planned Parenthood is also a form of eugenics that's connected to the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party is being controlled by the deep state shadow government, who is also controlled by the Khazarians. The Khazarians means wanderer. Wanderer means that they come from the place of Nod. The land of Nod is also planet Saturn. Planet Saturn is also Satan. So now when you look at the nomenclature title of the word democracy, the prefix of the word democracy means demo, right? Which is a form of demonic rulership. The suffix of the word democracy is krasi. Krasi comes from the word kratos. Kratos goes all the way back to the god of Saturn, who was Chronos, to where you trapped in an artificial time analysis mechanism, chronology. You're trapped in time. So the god of Saturn is also known as Father Time. Father Time is a form of demonic rulership under a democratic order that is being controlled by the deep state shadow government, who is doing the bidding of the archonic forces in Gnosticism, right? So with that being said, that's how you know that the people who control FEMA, right, are also the Khazars, because the Khazars, they work in tandem with the Red Cross Foundation. The Red Cross Foundation and FEMA are basically working in synergy, right? And the reason I say they working in synergy is because one thing you got to understand about Donald Trump, he signed the National Emergency Declaration that basically gave full validity to FEMA. So if FEMA works in tandem with the Red Cross Foundation, that means that behind the scenes, that the globalist agenda of Agenda 21 actually works in tandem with Project 2025. So there's no reason for these Democrats and these liberals to be upset about everything if they understood the political framework of the dystopian aspect of the New World Order system, right? So I got too far within the presentation, but I want to show you this video for a second. I want to show you this video basically breaking down the infrastructure of the globalist agenda. So for those who don't understand what Agenda 21 is, Agenda 21 is a globalist agenda that's coming from the far left. The far left is a bureaucratic system that's based upon democracy that's being controlled by the deep state, which is the shadow government.
For a master Agenda 21 is kind of a code name for a master plan originated at the United Nations to change the political and economic system of the world to one of total collectivism. And in order to do that, people must not be allowed to have independence. They must be dependent on the state for everything. Otherwise, it won't be easily
because, like I said, they want you to be dependent upon the system, because the first rule in nature is self-preservation. Self-preservation is a form of independence. That is your sovereignty. That is your birthright, right? To live on the land abundantly. But they don't want that because patriarchy is a form of capitalism. Capitalism is a form of imperialism that basically subjugates nature, right? Because they want you to go to them for the resources, which is a form of capitalism and classism that leads to other things like racism. I'm gonna play the video.
By the state. That means they can't have private property, mostly. They cannot have land of their own. They have to live in preferably high-rise apartments that are provided to them by the state as a benefit, so to speak. Oh, good, we got a free apartment. But these people at the top want all humans to be dependent on the largesse of the state. That means that they don't want anybody living out in the boonies. Anybody that's got a couple of acres of land and his own water supply and can grow his own food and that kind of thing, or have some sheep or some chickens, these people are a threat to the collectivist society because they aren't going to go to the politicians and say, please feed me, please clothe me, please give me shelter. They tend to be independent. That's the secret behind Agenda 21. They want people out of the country. They want corporations out there growing all the food and that kind of thing, but they don't want anybody living out there because that way they cannot be.
See, that's how you know you live in a de facto system. Everything is being ran by corporations. Corporations is a form of fraud because when you go to Uniform Commercial Code Title 18, Section 3002, it tells you that the United States government is a corporation. Corporations are ran by a form of fraud, right? The fraud is democracy. The fraud is the deep state shadow government, right? So that's why they want to propagate universal based income. They want to surveillance everything so much to the point where it's a totalitarian state with a militarized police system that's being controlled by the United Nations, New World Order system, right?
Controlled. In order to control mankind, we have to get them all into the big cities. We have to rack them up and stack them up, get them dependent on the state for their food, their shelter, their electrical power, their water, everything. That's the dirty secret behind Agenda 21.
Yep. That's one of the biggest secrets. But like I said, Agenda 2021 or Agenda 21, which is the agenda for the 21st century, for those coming in, it is coming from the far left. That's the globalist agenda. Project 2025 is coming from the far right, which is the Democrats. Far left is the Democrats, far right is the Republicans. Agenda 21 is coming from the Democrats. Project 2025 is coming from the Republican Party, right? So you're basically looking at socialism and Marxism versus fascism, but when you look at the end goal is a new world order, which is based on a totalitarian order that has economic intervention under a universal based income, which is based upon mass surveillance. Because as it was like the guy said, what he say? He wants you to move. They want you to move to the cities. They want you to move to the cities because that's where they're going to implement the smart cities, right? They're going to implement the smart cities. So this all that correlates to also was in correlation to the movie Civil War, but we finna get into it. So for those coming in, this is basically giving you the foundational structure of the dystopian system of Project 2025. I'm gonna play this video and I'm gonna break down the process for those who don't basically understand the whole inner workings of Project 2025. So I'm basically going to give you a simplistic breakdown within the video in this video.
Maybe to start with, for the audience members who aren't aware of what it is, can you give sort of a high-level overview of what Project 2025 is?
Sure. So Project 2025, or the 2025 Presidential Transition Project, that's the full name, it really is the conservative movement's effort to get ready for the next conservative president. It feels like in Washington, D.C., we're always playing an away game. We are always at a deficit compared to how.
The reason why the Republican Party is going to get in, because one thing you got to understand about the de facto corporation and the globalist agenda of the deep state shadow government. DC is closed down, right? The system has reached this verification period. The system has reached this mandated cap, right? So the totalitarian order is going to be enforced by the far right. So that's how you know that Donald Trump is going to be, he's still the president currently because he still has qualified immunity under the continuity of government, meaning that he controls the military, right? But he is just the face card of it because, like I said, he gave full validity to FEMA when he signed the National Declaration Act, right? The National Emergency Declaration. So one thing you gotta understand, since the political infrastructure of the de facto corporation is basically shut down because it's a demonstrative government, there's no more corporations, right? That means that in order to reverse the polarity, they got to put a person, a part of the far right bureaucratic system in office, right? They have to put him in office because he is going to be the precursor to the totalitarian order. He's going to be the precursor to the totalitarian order.
Left is so good at going into government. So what this project is, it's 4 pillars. The first pillar is our policy book called Mandate for Leadership. This outlines what a conservative success looks like at each federal agency. We have a second pillar, which is our presidential personnel database. We're doing the work ahead of time and recruiting people ahead of time to come to Washington and work for the next conservative president. The third pillar is our Presidential Administration Academy. That is training people up ahead of time so that we are ready to hit the ground running when we come to Washington with the next conservative president in 2025. And then the fourth pillar is what we call the playbook. And that's a transition plan for each federal agency. So that,
you know what I'm saying? You see how he's talking? He's talking as if he's basically insinuating that he's already going to be in office, right? So that's the semantics that's being played behind the scenes. You got to pay attention to the words. You got to pay attention to the energy because energy don't lie.
will be ready to hit the ground running. And all of these are available at project2025.org. That's how folks can get involved. I should mention that Project 2025 is organized by the Heritage Foundation, but it includes more than 70 partner organizations on our advisory board, all of whom are working together to get ready for the next president.
Spencer, let me ask you this. Out of the current Republican nominees, and let's say out of the, let's say 3 or 4 front runners, have any of them signaled support for this project?
Yes, we are working with various presidential candidates and their staff. And I think what has been heartening to us at Project 2025 is to see so many of the candidates talking about the importance of deconstructing the administrative state and defeating the permanent bureaucracy that exists in Washington, D.C. You see the various candidates talking about that. We've made it the #1 issue in this race. And it's not just Republicans either. You know, we'll work with anybody who is any candidate who wants to deconstruct the administrative state is welcome at Project 2025.
So Spencer, my next question is, sorry, I think a lot of people watching this interview are probably of the mindset that getting rid of the bureaucrats who exist from administration to administration to administration and are really running things and can really hamper an administration if they so choose to is a good thing. But on the flip side, I imagine that it would be difficult to do away with, let's say, tens of thousands, 50,000 positions. Let's say in the Department of Energy, for instance, if you're going to have a huge amount of turnover, I imagine a lot of institutional knowledge will just go away, and maybe you'll have a transition process where the lights maybe have a hard time staying on. How would you respond to that sort of criticism where some of the institutional knowledge might be lost in this transition process?
It's a good question. So what people need to remember is that you have 2.2 million full-time non-military federal employees. You have between 16 million and 20 million federal contractors. And traditionally, only between 3,000 and 4,000 people work for the president. Those are the political appointees who can be hired and fired by the president. And we need more political appointees. We need more who come from outside Washington, D.C. With respect to the number that you mentioned, you know, what the vision is of Project 2025, and you see various presidential candidates talking about this as well, is that for those federal employees who hold policy-making positions, those positions should be reportable to the president. We're not necessarily
notice he said policy enforcers. That's a police state. Police state is a totalitarian order.
Get rid of one person. What this is to reassert political control of the bureaucracy. And the president is entitled to a supportive staff. The president is the commander in chief. He's the chief executive officer, and the executive
commander in chief, aka, which is a form of a dictatorship that's coming from the bureaucratic system of fascism,
should be working to implement the president's vision. So that's what this is about. And folks should know that the conservative movement is ready and determined to bring about political control of the bureaucracy, in addition to reforming the civil service, making sure that the federal workforce operates more like the private sector, where you can dismiss poor performers rather than giving them basically lifetime tenure that they have now.
Just to circle back to that question, though, I mean, in terms of the institutional knowledge, you're saying that you would be focusing more on the policy makers within a department versus the individual people who are like at the more ground level, who have the actual technical knowledge. Is that correct?
That's right. I mean, we need institutional knowledge within the bureaucracy. In fact, we've had many current federal employees, reach out to Project 2025 to help us, which we really appreciate. And we appreciate the good work that many federal civil servants do each day. Schedule F, which has been talked about a lot in the media, is something that would make it so that if you hold a policy-making position, that becomes a position that is reportable to the president. That's the way it was always supposed to be. What we have now, what the bureaucracy has become, is an unaccountable fourth branch of the government that is impervious to election results, and conservative presidents have a tough time navigating it. So that's what we're trying to address.
So you mentioned earlier that you have a presidential personnel database. How many people do you already have?
We have more than the traditional number of political appointees in Washington. That's that 3,000 to 4,000 that I mentioned. We're getting more every day. We have said we want not just 3,000 to 4,000, but 10 or 20,000 people to come into this database and get ready to come to Washington and work for the next conservative president. And it continues to grow every day. We're taking our project on the road. We're visiting people where they are. Last month, we were at the Iowa State Fair. We've been to a couple of colleges and universities, participated in conservative events, spoken at conservative meetings. We're going to continue to do that and really branch out from outside Washington to get people into this system.
Mm. Are you seeing any difficulty in the sense that people who are more conservative are not as keen on moving to Washington, D.C., which is, at least according to the voting record, something like 94, 95% Democrat?
You have identified a significant problem, and that is that the politics of the D.C. area are not favorable to us. That's why it always feels like we're playing an away game. And that's why the federal workforce, you can look at how federal employees make their political contributions. Go look it up on the Federal Election Commission website, and it's pretty staggering, the number that are going to progressive candidates. But at the same time, we need conservatives to come to Washington, and we're seeing a real interest in Project 2025, not only because the conservative movement has never done this before, but also because people are beginning to understand just how big the deep state is, just how big the bureaucracy is.
And a lot of people think it's a conspiracy talking about the deep state. That's why you got to get this book. He just said the deep state, right? You got to get this book called Donald Trump, the FBI, and the Rule of Law by James B. Stewart, right? It's called The Deep State. Talks about the shadow government that is being ran out by Khazars, right? That's why Donald Trump said he wants to drain the swamp. The swamp is the deep state that controls democracy, right? So you got to get this book. I'm gonna show you some of the table of contents. You know what I'm saying? Uh, it talks about his next presidency, the explosion of the deep state, trafficking, and things of that nature. It breaks it all down.
Want to be a part of something that can come help the next president fight and win battles on behalf of the American people who put him or her there.
Mm. And in terms of the academy that you have, this is something that you do online. You don't have to travel to Washington, D.C. It's something that you're sort of preemptively doing. Is it sort of an online academy?
Yes, it is. It's at project2025.org. You can click on training and apply. It only takes a few minutes. And what we're doing is we're hosting lectures, online courses for people who want to come to Washington or who are just interested in what it's like to work for the president, what the political hiring process is like, where are your kids going to go to school in Washington, D.C. We've got 17 lectures, 17 courses that are currently live. We have more than 40 that will be live by the end of 2023. And then we do hope to move to hosting some in-person ones in 2024. But anyone is welcome. It's project2025.org. And this is our attempt to demystify serving in government for conservatives and get people ready ahead of time so that we're ready to hit the ground running on day one and we don't spend our first year in office, trying to find the bathroom at the federal agencies.
But that's interesting. So the academy, I was thinking it's more technical, but I guess the people already need to have those technical skills to fill that position. This is more like practical, like, this is where your kids would go to school, like you mentioned. This is the neighborhoods to avoid. This is how the political process works, right? It's more like technical like that.
It's all of the above, really. It is everything from how to work with the media to what to expect when you start working for the president, security clearances, financial disclosures, all of the things that you need to be thinking about if you're going to be a political appointee who works for the president of the United States.
You have a section in the guidebook, and you mentioned in there that the Trump administration appointed fewer political appointees in their first few months of office than any other recent president that left career employees in charge of, wound up leaving career employees in charge of many different sections of the bureaucracy. Can you actually give any examples of how this negatively impacted Trump's presidency in a concrete way?
Sure. Well, that's a good question. So one thing is it took the Trump administration longer to get the cabinet confirmed by the U.S. Senate. The last Trump cabinet member was confirmed by the Senate at the end of April 2017. By contrast, the Biden administration had their entire cabinet confirmed by the middle of March of 2021, and that was with fewer senators than Republicans had during the Trump administration. So some of the problem is we need to work better with the Senate to confirm our people on time. The other thing I would say is that yes, President Trump was an outsider. He did many great things for the country, but one of the things that we left on the table during the Trump administration was really to get a hold of how to run the bureaucracy, how to manage the bureaucracy. And so you did have in the various different contexts, you had either Obama holdovers or you had career federal employees running entire agencies or offices. And that did hamstring the president's ability to implement his agenda throughout the executive branch. So that's one of the things that we are looking at through Project 2025 so that we're able to get our folks in more quickly.
Mm.
With during the Trump administration was really to get a hold of how to run the bureaucracy, how to manage the bureaucracy. And so you did have in the various different contexts, you had either Obama holdovers or you had career federal employees running entire agencies or offices. And that did hamstring the president's ability to implement his agenda throughout the executive branch. So that's one of the things.
So the reason he said it was a holdover and it was hard for the president to do that because the Democrats, they are the ones who control the infrastructure of the executive branch, right? To where they propagate executive orders, where they bypass Congress, which is also a form of dictatorship, right? So I had to show you that video to show you so you can get a intuitive understanding about Project 25, Project 2025, and how it basically delineates from Agenda 21, which is the agenda for the 21st century, not the agenda for 2021. Now, the more, you know, we're going to come back to that. Now, one thing that I noticed about the whole infrastructure of Project 2025, that is basically going to be the precursor to a civil war, just like they propagated, which is a form of premeditated psychological operation, right? Through imagery, because symbolism is going to be their downfall. So Civil War, the movie came out, but Project 2025 is basically going to be the enforcer that's going to create this phenomenon on the geographical landmass of America, right? So Project 2025 gives veneration to the Republican states and a loyalist, right? Loyalist and the Republic. And you have Western forces, then you got the Florida Alliance. So all this is basically talking about the Democratic states versus Republican states. Those for Agenda 21, those for Project 2025. Because as I was showing you in Project 2025, according to some of the things that they want to eradicate the great majority of the ideologies that comes from the rainbow community. That's why when you look at the movie Civil War, it shows you a guy with his fingernails painted, the color spectrum of the transmission agenda, right? When you look at that flag. So when you eradicate everything that basically comes from democracy, because they've been, one thing about the Democrats, they've been giving us degeneracy for so long, so much to the point where we're basically desensitized and we think that it's normal. Now, Project 2025, what it does is it basically pulls the rug from under the system. It pulls the rug from under the corporations. It's kind of like the same concept when you have a 13-year-old son or a 13-year-old child and you let them play the PlayStation 5 every single day. But that one day you take the PlayStation away from them, it basically puts them in a state of destabilization. They're going to be very upset. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times they're going to rebel. So the rebellion aspect is a form of anarchy. Anarchy is a form of the Civil War. So when Project 2025 basically eradicates everything according to the liberalistic democratic agenda, that's where the Civil War is going to spark off. So that's how it correlates to Project 2025 and Agenda 21, right? So one thing you got to understand about the Kissinger report, because the Kissinger report is also connected to Project 2025 as well, which is the National Memorandum 200 that was created by the Secretary of State in 1974 to 1975, who was Henry Kissinger, right? Who was also a part of the Republican Party. So the National Memorandum 200 is basically a form of eugenics and depopulation. And Henry Kissinger said right here verbatim, depopulation should be the highest priority of the United States foreign policy towards the third world, basically. So he is the author of the Kissinger Report, 200 Implications of Worldwide Population Growth for the United States Secretary Interest. Now, there's this book you got to read. I showed you this book before, right here. It's called Henry Kissinger White House Years. It talks about the eugenics system. It talks about Project 2025, but it basically wasn't called Project 2025. It was called the foundation of the economic intervention. Economic intervention is a form of totalitarian control on a universal based income. So you got to get this book right here, White House Years. You see how old this book is? Very old. Because it gives you the foundation and the blueprint that they basically reconstructed back during the 1970s. So this plan was already, formulated. All this stuff was already premeditated, right? All this stuff was basically premeditated a long time ago. Now, one thing you understand about, the technology and the fallacies that's being propagated by the deep state shadow government who controls the liberalistic democratic states. This is the hierarchical rankings in the framework of the socio-political state rankings from highest to lowest. So you got the highest poverty rates and homeless and crime rates. This is all coming from democratic states. The lowest is coming from the Republican states, right? So why would Democrats be against Project 2025 when really it's basically trying to reset the system? But that doesn't nullify the fact that the far right bureaucratic lobbyists are basically or loyalists. They're basically good. They're not benevolent. Republicans are not benevolent. Like I said, they all have one end goal, and the end goal is a new world order system. They just have different journeys on how to get there. So this is why Donald Trump wants to drain the swamp. Draining the swamp is draining the deep state. The deep state is the Democratic Party, right? He wants to drain the swamp, the deep state, right? He wants to drain the swamp of lies, corruption, crime, propaganda, globalism, which is Agenda 21. So now we're finna get into some videos because, like I said, when you destabilize the globalist agenda, a lot of people who are submerged into the democratic and liberalistic agenda, they're going to fight for the matrix as the matrix in the house of cards is falling. They're going to fight. They're going to fight for the simulation. So this is where the deep state shadow government and the democratic agenda, they're going to send their black minions to basically uphold this illusion. Just like this woman right here. Because just because they look like you don't mean that they're basically for you. She is fighting for the system. She is fighting for everything that basically eradicates black existence, that basically eradicates humanity. She's for the eugenic system. She's for the rainbow community. She's for Black Lives Matter and things of that nature. She's for basically everything that basically destroys everything that comes from the Democratic Party.
2025 is a far-right manifesto. It is a 1,000-page bucket list of extremist policies that would uproot every government agency and disrupt the lives of every person who calls this country home. The Department of Education would be eliminated, cutting students off from civil rights protections.
It needs to be eliminated because it's academic fraud, right? Everything that we learned in our schools is basically a form of indoctrination. The indoctrination program is how they get you acclimated to their system to uphold and fight for the matrix, just like this woman right here. This is all a form of indoctrination, right? Because as we're going through reset, you're going to see more people who are going to be fighting for the illusion.
Cutting students off from civil rights protections and ending essential Title I funding for K through 12 schools. The Department of Justice would go on a murdering spree. It would rush to use the death penalty and expand its use to even more people while circumventing due process protections. Project 25 not only calls for national book bans in schools, but also creates a list of banned words for the federal government that would be deleted from, quote, every federal rule, agency regulation, contract, grant, and piece of legislation that exists. End quote. Here are just a few of the words on the list: diversity, gender, reproductive health, and of course, conservatives want to ban the word abortion. On that note, abortion care would be inaccessible and illegal no matter where you live. Now, we could have an entire hearing.
She's talking to this is the semantics that's being played when you're talking about these black politicians or whatever. She is talking about, the eradication of humanity, but the death style of the rainbow community that's being propagated by liberalism, that death style actually eradicates the numbers of those who are submerged into that lifestyle, right? Because there's no babies being born during that process. Two men cannot make a baby. Two women cannot make a baby, right?
How these policies would quite literally ruin and end lives. And I didn't even touch upon proposals for housing, climate change.
So, like I said, they're not. So she's talking about ending lives, but at the same time, but she wants to be against banning abortions, but banning abortions is a form of so much to the point where, I mean, there's exceptions to the rule. Now, if a woman, she gets harmed by a person and she gets, somebody, takes advantage of her and she gets pregnant during that process, then yeah, that's considerable. But what I'm talking about is when it basically eradicates, it's a form of depopulation because it goes all the way back to eugenics. So when you have a baby being born out of wedlock and you want to get rid of that baby, like I said, that's basically going to disseminate the numbers. It's going to break down the numbers because, like I said, it's going to basically destabilize population growth. So she's up here talking about, she's acting like she's pro humanity, but being pro abortion is not pro humanity.
Worker protections and more. If enacted, Project 2025 would destroy the federal government as we know it. Project 2025 is a far right.
And the federal government has to be destroyed because it's all based on fraud. Anything that comes out of democracy is fraud. So, just based on her ideologies or whatever, she's a Democrat off top. That's why they pander the black vote. The Democrats pander the black vote because they know that the great majority of the demographics of blacks are basically indoctrinated, right? They under psychological warfare. They don't even know they're being brainwashed because they're being brainwashed. You know what I'm saying? This is what you see is pandering to the blacks to where they're basically politically naive to the technology of the deep state shadow government. Because everything that basically destroys black people comes from the democratic system because there's no such thing as a democracy. When we used to say the Pledge of Allegiance, it's I pledge allegiance to a republic. It does not say to the democracy because the inception of a republic come from a matriarch. The matriarch is the foundation of our true spiritual existence, right? Which is a form of balance. The man and a woman. That's what the matriarch is. The matriarch is not based upon the woman being uplifted above the man. It's based on balance. The man and the woman working in synergy like a machine in a factory. So this is why they pander the black vote. It's all a form of technology. That's what this is all about. So that's why Donald Trump wants to drain the swamp. Now, one thing that I found out about the Project 2025 manifesto as I was reading through it, I came across some key words, and I see that the Sabbath, they want to basically stop people from working on the Sabbath, right? They want to stop people from working on the Sabbath. But when you get into the Gnostic texts, based upon Gnosticism mythology, Sophia named her offspring Yaldabaoth. Yaldabaoth is also Yahweh. Yahweh, when you break down the etymology of the word in the Tetragrammaton, it means agreeable and disagreeable, which is also equated to Lord Sabbath. A Lord is an archon. An archon is a ruler, right? So Yaldabaoth, Yahweh, Enlil, Father Time is Chronos, which is connected to the god of Saturn that controls the demiurge. The demiurge is the third dimension merged in with the lower fourth dimension. That is basically the foundation of the simulation. So this is where you have the evil forces who control the world, who control the Khazars. Khazars means wanderer. Wanderer comes from the land of Nod, planet Saturn. That's when you get into the inception point of the 200 fallen angels, but that's not the video for this, right? I'm just giving you the breakdown of how they want you to basically show veneration to the Sabbath. The Lord of the Sabbath is Yahweh. Yahweh is actually Satan. That's Enlil. Yaldabaoth, Kronos, god of Saturn, Satan, right? God of the simulation. So if they want to show credence to the Sabbath, you're showing credence to their God. So it's basically the same thing, whether it's propagated by Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is basically a slower process. Project 2025 goes from conservative fascism to totalitarianism. What the Agenda 2021 does is based on democracy, socialism, Marxism, communism, totalitarianism, then transhumanism. That is their process. So this is why you got to understand everything that's going on right now. You got to be a scientist when it comes to this stuff. You know what I'm saying? You got to be a decoder, right? You got to understand the science of circumology. So if you can, screenshot some of this, because when you look at Donald Trump right here, Donald Trump, it is showing you how he is basically the precursor to the storm. That storm is coming. And that storm in itself is going to activate a militarized industrial complex. And it's going to uphold a new form of Declaration of Independence. That's why Donald Trump signed the second Declaration of Independence in 2020, right? To where they uphold the protocols of the Elders of Zion, which is connected to the Thule Society in a form of eugenics. So this is, like I said, this is a totalitarian system. Totalitarian system that is going to be controlled by a new world order system. So could it be that Donald Trump is Pindar, right? Who controls the community of 300 and the international corporations and banks? So if you will, screenshot some of this. Screenshot some of this and follow the color spectrum, because it leads you down a rabbit hole of a certain truth. Now I'm going to get into some more videos, because I was telling you before, Project 2025 is basically the foundation of a autocracy that is a ultra-nationalist cybernetic dictatorship, to the point where they're basically able to mass surveillance the public, which is a form of a new world order system.
Means safer streets. Tonight, a first-hand look at major upgrades here in Atlanta. Thousands of streetlights have been installed, repaired, and upgraded. Both Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens and Georgia Power officials let us see some of these improvements firsthand. Atlanta News First Yasmina Alston is live in Midtown tonight. And Yasmina, this is part of the Light Up the Night initiative, right?
Yeah, Alan, and we're talking more than 11,000 streetlights that have been either installed, replaced, or repaired, like you mentioned. And it's lights like the ones that you see behind me here on 14th Street that look a whole lot
like. See, those lights are basically talking about the upgrading of the light system are basically smart lights. Those smart lights sucks up microscopic waves of energy from the carbon body that basically puts an encryption on the body. It puts an encryption because it basically destabilizes the DNA in the genetical structure to the point where it's connected to a form of artificial light. The artificial light is the lunar light lock energy. So the cybernetic dictatorship basically extracts subatomic particles from the nanotechnology that works in tandem with the streetlight system. So they trying to create a form of, it's like I said, it's a cybernetic dictatorship. That's what you're looking at. Because these smart lights connect with the smart dust particles.
Driving around the city, you might notice parts of Atlanta are a lot brighter and feel safer.
You can see them. You can see the big difference.
What once was yellow light is now more white. We rode along with Georgia Power and city officials, including Mayor Andre Dickens, comparing the old streetlights with the new streetlights. More than 11,000 streetlights across the city have been installed, repaired, or upgraded.
Because we know that where there's no light, there's a lot of opportunities for crime and for car crashes, pedestrian crashes.
Parts of Ralph McGill Boulevard, near Atlanta City Hall, through the Georgia State University campus, all seriously lit up.
Looking at other campuses too, like the AUC Center. I talked with Dr. French of Clark today, and he wants some additional lights. So we're going to work with Georgia Power to make sure that we light up the campus areas as well to make sure students are safe.
The latest phase is part of the Light Up the Night initiative. It started by fixing lights that weren't working and then upgrading all lights to LED technology, creating the brighter look you see. The goal is to make your walk home safer, reduce crime, and cut down on car accidents in certain areas. The LED lights also help reduce the city's energy usage and lower any.
See, like I said, they mix the medicine with the candy. They tell you all the incentives that come with it. But really, like I said, it basically subjugates your DNA with artificial light. It sucks up the microscopic waves of energy from the carbon body. Lunar light lock. So you got those smart cities. Like I said, it's a totalitarian order. Oh, I forgot to show you this video as well.
There it is.
Okay, that's the Space Force logo.
I can send it to you.
Well, hold on, I'm recording the Space Force logo upside down.
Because Donald Trump basically controls the militarized infrastructure, even the Space Force. Now, when I got the whole publication of the Project 2025 manifesto, I got the whole thing right here. Now, when you type in Space Force, we're going to type that in. We're going to type in Space Force. So it goes into the National Space Council using the civil, military, intelligence, commercial, or diplomatic, historical contexts. Because whoever controls the military controls the Space Force. And the same person who controls Project 2025, which is a transitional project, runs the world. So you got that, like, you got to read this manifesto, put in certain keywords if you want to get an intuitive understanding about what's going on. But yeah, this is most definitely the Project 2025 manifesto that you're looking at. Goes in talking about the Space Force and the Department of Health, Human Services. You know, it's a 1,000-page read. They even talk about the Great Awakening in this manifesto. So this is the whole rundown of Project 2025. So had to pull that up for you, so I don't really need it anymore. Because it's self-explanatory. Everything, whether it's coming from Agenda 21 or Project 2025. It's all based on totalitarianism.
Oh yeah, and that's just the beginning. I'm just getting kind of whetting the appetite right now. It gets much worse from here on out. It's even going to get more obvious than that in his own symbolism. I was also kind of sharing this example. You know, we got more. Let me know when you're ready. I'll go through some others.
Go ahead. Keep going.
Okay, we have the symbolism of the Abraham Accords, which is all about third temple and genetic corruption and alien worship. And remember, this happened about the time of the worldwide capitulation tour, where everybody was essentially bowing to the king of the Jews, the son of perdition.
You heard what he said about alien worship.
And genetic corruption and alien worship. And remember, this happened about the time of the worldwide capitulation.
Now, look at everything that's on here. It says the front side is full of Babylonian imagery, the tower and the minaret, the third temple. The reserve side shows binary codes along with the satellite system. Yep. We in that time, ladies and gentlemen. So for those coming in, for those who don't understand the mechanisms of Project 2025, you have to be able to delineate what's going on between the far left and the far right. The far left is the Democrats. The Democrats are propagating Agenda 21 because they're being controlled by the deep state shadow government. The deep state shadow government is basically the foundation of liberalism. Liberalism is the precursor to socialism and Marxism. Marxism is the foundation of communism. Communism is the gateway to a cybernetic dictatorship to where you have transhumanism. Now, when you go to the far right are the Republicans. The Republicans are the ones who is propagating Project 2025, which is a presidential transition project that is being operated by conservatives, because conservative ideologies is a precursor to fascism. Fascism is the foundation of a militarized police state that is based on autocracy and an ultranationalist system that is being controlled by Christians under a one world religion, which is a form of totalitarianism under a new world order religion or a new world order. So the end goal for both is a new world order. When you look at the middle right here, that is the end goal. But Project 2025, it takes you right there because it basically eradicates everything in Agenda 21 to the point where it's going to cause a civil war. That's where you get your chaos and order, but the order is going to be a new war order, right? The chaos is coming from Project 2025. And the order is going to come from Project 2025. But the order is going to be a new world order under a totalitarian, authoritarian, mass surveillance, and economic intervention under a universal-based income. So what happens is everything according to Agenda 21 is where you get your liberalistic ideologies from, to where they let you do whatever. You can do whatever. You got, I forgot what they call it. It's a certain education in the schools where they just let you pass at any grade, no matter how good or bad you did, they just pass you on to the next grade. Everything according to Agenda 21, it basically sets up humanity for failure, right? While giving them incentives to be indoctrinated. That's what Agenda 21 does, the agenda for the 21st century. Project 2025 eradicates the globalist agenda to where the people who fight for Agenda 21 and democracy are going to bite back at those who propagate Project 2025, because that's where it's going to cause a form of civil war, right? When you have civil war activated, that activates FEMA. That's when you have martial law coming into play, right? This is where the Western world is going to see, a civil war that's taking place. Because you're going to have people like this, You got the painted fingernails. As I was telling you, that comes from the liberalistic agenda of Agenda 21. But Project 2025 goes against that. So the people are part of the matrix are going to fight for the matrix. That's where the rebellion, that's where the anarchy comes in. That's why Donald Trump wants to drain the swamp. Right? Now I'm finna talk to you for a little bit. Now, when it comes to getting an intuitive understanding about what's going on, what's going to be happening in the future, you got to understand the inception of where these matriarchal energies came from, right? That's why you got to get this book called Astronomy. No, it's not a Freemasonic book, but it basically exposes the great Masonic secret, which is the master keys. The master keys is the silver key and the golden key. 360 degrees of the spiritual plane, 360 degrees of the physical plane, 720 degrees of knowledge. When you have 720 degrees of knowledge, you're able to understand the socio-political aspect of civics to where you're not caught up into the semantics and the technology of Agenda 2021 and the Project 2025. You got to read this book right here called The Holy Quran of the Circle Seven for those who understand the Moorish literature. Breaks everything down, talking about how the inception of, the indigenous people, everything started with a matriarch. Matriarch is a form of a republic. But Project 2025 gives you the semantical version of a republic because it's connected to a totalitarian systematic system, basically. It's a globalist agenda that leads to the New World Order. So even though Donald Trump is basically draining the swamp and he's basically eliminating certain things, that doesn't basically nullify the fact that he's basically a benevolent entity who's for the people, because his ass is basically in alignment to be, your so-called savior or antichrist of the system. So I wouldn't trust Donald Trump's ass either. And I damn sure wouldn't trust no goddamn Democrat. So in order to level up mentally, spiritually, vibrationally, you have to detach yourself from the system, detach yourself from the political infrastructure, especially if you don't understand it. The great majority of so-called Black people, they have psychologically indoctrinated you to the point where you're politically naive. You vote for things because it makes you feel good. You like how it sounds. Not because you did your own edification and your own independent research about what's taking place at hand. Right? So what happens is when you're psychologically indoctrinated by the system, you're going to fight for the system. When the system in the House of Cards is basically being eradicated. Watch how hard the deep state is going to send these Black politicians, these Black pastors or whatever. Watch how hard they're going to try to, get people to fight and bite back against Project 2025. But like I said, it's an oxymoron. It's a catch-22 basically. Project 2025 has good things in it and it has bad things in it. But the precursor to everything is going to lead up to the New World Order, right? Because it's going to cause anarchy. They're getting rid of everything that was basically degenerate to the planet. That's why Donald Trump wants to drain the swamp. The swamp is the Democrats. The swamp is the deep state. The swamp is the shadow government. The swamp is the liberalists, right? So this is why we must step away from religion too. Because as I was telling you before, when you go to the G3526 Strong Concordance, the word Christian translates to the word Black. Black connects you to the 1724 Black Christian codes, right? Which is where the police get their policies from. Policy enforcers, policemen, right? That works in tandem with the Uniform Commercial Codes. Because the Uniform Commercial Code shows you that the United States is a corporation, a de facto corporation that's connected to democracy. That's why Democrats pander the Black vote to Blacks and they use the pastors. right? They want you to be Christians because it takes you out of your sovereign capacity, because it puts you under ecclesiastical law. It puts you under the 14th Amendment, right? It puts you under the corporate internal codes of the energy extraction matrix. So that's why you had to get away from the political system, get away from the religion, because the whole infrastructure of the religion and the political system, they work in tandem, because it's all going to be propagated by a one world religion that's going to be activated by Project 2025, right? Because it's a ultra-nationalist, militarized, Christianized nation, right? To where they don't uphold the ideologies of the rainbow community. They want to get rid of all that. And the people who are connected to that infrastructure, they're going to fight for the system. As I was showing you, the imagery in the publications of the movie Civil War, that's what's going to happen. I figured it out. As again, like I said, Illuminati, I'm on to you. I figured out what y'all going to do. I already figured it out. That's how the Civil War is going to spark off. The Civil War is going to spark off because those who are fighting for Agenda 21, the Democrats, the liberalists, right? They're going to fight for the matrix. But Project 2025 eradicates the matrix. But once the matrix is basically eradicated, that's when they have the New World Order system, a totalitarian order. So no matter if you're following the Democrats, Agenda 21, or the Republican Party's Project 2025, it all leads up to the New World Order under a totalitarian system. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching this video. End of transmission.
10:14. We will put an end to this madness.
It's me again, God. I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land. Karma's gonna get to you and then you'll have a chariot with only one less friend. Now I had distant folks that are looking to my eyes to understand the wisdom he's given and his wealth from the skies. So thanks for this meal that I'm about to receive, and thank you for my health and all the good memories. Thanks for the courage taking on another day when I used to not believe, but now I know about grace. Stay away from the fire cause the flames does burn. Go with your gut feeling, when it's wrong you learn. For every one step I take, the Lord takes two. And do unto others if you want it done unto you. It's me again, God. I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land. It's me again, God. I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land. This a completion, the selfish Proto-Grecian, Amerindian, Phoenician. I'm the last of the Mohicans, the bastard of the land, the pen, melanin, accretion. And we just trying to get back to the fact that we was kings and queens of a land before the avalanche seized it. I live on Turtle Island with the rest of the diseased. Better than the medicine for 7 different treatments. Niggas try to ride away but end up getting seasick. The sleep can feel my words like Braille and they're awakened with the penmanship of Hindu script written in them vacant monastery honor. Payments to the prototype. Tomorrow's only a day away, but nothing happens overnight. The fuck's wrong with going left when you know it's right? Biting off more than I can chew, that's an overbite. Black on black crime is like watching 2 soldiers fight when all along they was on the same page. History. It's me again, God. I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land. It's me again, God. I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder.